Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering.
Woo!
You have James,
Dave?
and today we're going to be talking about smokers, smoking meat, and why we would do that.
Because it's delicious.
Because it's delicious is pretty much the only reason I need, but I guess there's a little bit more that goes into it.
Back in the caveman days, there were lots of things to eat that would kill you. So I think it's in our DNA to search out cooked and burning flesh.
All right. I think it's interesting. This is our second episode in a row talking about the caveman days.
Well, you gotta start back in the day. Know where you're from.
Okay, that's fair. So you have a little more experience, and by a little more, I mean a lot more experience in
Sure.
smoking meat than I do. Super professional.
Right.
So why don't you jump in on why we smoke meat in the first place?
Well, as I'm trying to get to, we're kind of bred to seek after cooked meats. That's why I don't understand vegetarians at all.
Me neither.
Because your DNA is telling you,
Not
hey,
that there's anything wrong with that.
right. If people want to be wrong, that's fine.
Right, right.
But you can't tell me that when you walk past a restaurant or a barbecue or something like that, and you get that waft out, that it's not doing all kinds of things to you on a molecular level,
Sure.
on a cellular level.
Sure.
You just start to crave it. And
So-
so, what is smoke?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's pretty much what you get when you burn something. Done.
Right. And
Done.
the smoke and the smell that we're after is a result of burning fuel, usually wood, and so the smoke itself is water vapor and some basic gases and unburned solids from that wood.
So the smoke itself isn't just helping to cook, it's infusing flavor into
Right.
whatever delicious product we're deciding to smoke.
Because the smoke is somewhat dirty, right? And as it goes up past your food, it's depositing, and
All right.
it's adding deliciousness.
All right, so makes sense. So a little bit about the basics behind smoking. So my understanding, as limited as it may be, is that they all kind of work in the same way. All of the different types of smokers, where you put food on a cooking rack, right?
Right.
You keep it away from direct heat, and the hot smoke rising from usually wood chips is what's then going to cook your food slowly
Correct.
and infuse it with all of that deliciousness.
Right. So like 200 years ago, you figure
200.
every meal was cooked this way. You get
Is
a
that
fire.
true?
It's basically a campfire, right?
In 18 something? Is that what they
Sure.
did? Okay.
Yeah, cowboys, right?
Sure. Is that when cowboys were around?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So you're cooking over an open fire. You have the smoke getting onto your whatever you're cooking, your meal,
Okay.
and so people kind of got used to that flavor, started to get to crave that flavor, and we've kind of gotten away from that with more modern processing and things like that. So a lot of people are trying to go back or continue to cook the old way, if you will.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Right.
And so another benefit of cooking this way is it prevents your food from drying out. Is that right?
Right. Well, and part of that is typically in a smoker you have a water pan,
Okay.
and so you're introducing water
Extra
vapor.
extra water vapor then.
Right.
Okay, makes sense. So slow cooking, low and slow is apparently what they say for smoking. So
correct.
low meaning 200 to 40?
Well, we're
Something in
looking
there?
for 212. You want to
212,
want to
okay.
get it hot enough, but 230 is kind of the maximum. So that would be the sweet. So get a 15 degree.
That's
Yeah.
that's tight.
I mean, you can always go lower. It's just going to take a little longer.
Okay.
But if you go over 230, 235, that's when you start to break down the cell structure, the cell wall.
The cell wall.
So as the the animal cell wall breaks down, you start to lose nutrients and moisture, obviously. But so you want to keep the wall up so every bite's juicy and
Okay.
delicious and
I
nutritious.
do want that.
But one of the benefits of cooking for a longer time at a lower temperature, obviously, so it doesn't come out matching your brick hole. Your,
My brick hole?
yeah, your brick hole.
Whoa.
Your charcoal. So we're trying to break down that connective tissue. And that's only achieved by cooking something for a long period because it takes a long time.
So smoking is delicious, but the way you're describing it does not make it sound so appetizing.
Connective tissue is not doing it for you?
No.
No.
it is
See,
not.
now Smoking allows you to take a $10 hunk of meat and turn it into something delicious otherwise, because if you cooked it during traditional methods, it would turn out tough, because if you cooked it too fast or like a normal piece of meat, not going to be good. That's why it's cheap.
Okay. So, along these lines, have you heard of blue smoke?
Blue smoke.
Blue smoke. Okay, I apparently know something that you do not.
I have not.
So when you're in that happy range of what 212 to 230 tops, apparently the smoke is said to be blue. So it's nearly invisible, or it has a light blue hint to it.
Really?
And that's where you know you are in like the money zone for your
So
smoking.
if you see
billowing white smoke, call the fire
too hot,
department.
yeah. Well, now,
because
now
your
I'm
house
starting
is
to,
on fire.
I'm starting to go back onto my last weekend. I did this and trying to think of what color it was. I think it was probably a little closer to that white. I tend to run a little hot.
Well, that gets into one of my fun facts of apparently you can over smoke your food.
No, that's not true.
I didn't think it was true either, but it seems like a good rule of thumb is if you're only using smoke about half of the cooking time,
Yeah.
you will probably have a good flavor. Now, some
Really?
people like it a little smokier, some people like it a little less smoky, so it depends on your tastes.
Huh.
But if you're doing it the whole time and it's really going strong, you're probably going to taste mostly just smoke when you bite into
Yeah,
something.
why would you want anything else? That's the whole point.
Maybe people like the taste of steak or chicken or fish or whatever.
No. I did read something called the 3-2-1 method,
3-2-1.
where you
That's
divide
easy.
your total cooking time by 6. And we're engineers, so we can do that,
Math.
right? And so that 3 is half of the 6, right? So half of your cooking time
It is.
is smoked normal.
Okay.
And then 2, which is 2/3 of the second half, you cover whatever you're cooking in foil, you wrap it up.
Okay.
And so really that would keep the smoke away from it. That would just let the heat get it. And then you'd unwrap it for that final third to get some smoke there at the end.
Okay. I
So
guess that makes
you
sense.
said about half, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty close.
Okay, so I guess we're on the same page there.
Mine just comes with an equation, that's all.
Way too many fractions for me. When I have to start changing the denominator to get
Right.
things to
Okay,
match up
so
where
2
past where I'm going.
hours is 120 minutes. Z divides by 6 nicely, you'd be fine.
So it sounds like some stuff though, 2 hours that's like the min for smoking.
Yeah.
It can be like 24 more hours.
Well, so if you start to have thick cuts,
Thick
like
cuts.
you
Oh,
know,
'cause why
entire
wouldn't you?
entire parts of an animal, like a pork shoulder,
Right.
things like that,
Yeah.
you know, then it's going to take a while to penetrate all the way. And you want it to cook evenly, so
yeah, definitely want it to penetrate as much as possible.
correct.
All right. One more fun fact before we move on. It's a little less fun, but apparently you can also smoke cheese and fruits. But
Yeah.
this goes back to why would you not want to just smoke more delicious meats?
Right. Well, and, you know, a lot of other recipes not related to smoking or barbecuing,
Okay.
they can call for smoked spices.
Smoked spices.
Like smoked
okay.
paprika.
Smoked paprika.
That's
Delicious.
pretty common, right?
Yes.
So one of the arguments that I have at home is, how do you smoke a powder,
Yeah.
right? Because it has to be in something that allows the smoke to get to it.
Yet it's powder.
Right.
Yeah. A coffee filter?
Maybe. That's actually a pretty good
Maybe.
idea, but typically those are paper. That might be terrible.
That could go poorly.
Yeah.
Well, not if it's just hot
That's
air,
actually not
right?
a bad idea. That would be interesting to try.
think
Maybe
I
like
just
one of those
solved your
fancy,
problem.
those fancy brass ones.
Yeah.
I'd melted.
This is getting expensive fast, but
Yeah.
okay.
Right. When does brass? What's the melting point of brass?
Probably a lot higher than 200 degrees.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to some smoker basics, and I'm going to talk about an offset smoker to be specific.
Interesting.
All right. So what are the parts of this smoker? The smoke chamber, and grate. So smoke chamber, where all the smoke goes. This is where the grate is, and you put the food on it.
I feel like they should just call that the food chamber.
Well, I
Wouldn't
guess
that
we could
simplify
call it.
things?
The,
Like,
but
okay, obviously the smoke's going to be there. I
They're
assume
both going
smoke
there.
is going to be everywhere.
the smoke and food chamber. Is
Right.
that better?
That now I'm on board.
There's also a firebox. This is where you start the
Pretty
fire.
self-explanatory.
But-
Fire's over here, food's over
But
here.
that doesn't mean it's just fire. There's
But
also
smoke is
charcoal
everywhere.
or wood or whatever else in there as well.
Sure.
A smokestack, usually on the opposite end of the firebox.
Sure.
So that the smoke then travels up and through and makes
Create-
everything delicious,
Create a draft.
right? And in the firebox, there's also an air dampener. And this is how we control the temperature and smoke that's going through the, what did we call it? The smoke and food chamber.
Correct.
So if it's not hot enough, we open this thing up and more smoky air starts flowing through. If it's too hot, we can close it down a little bit, and it slows things down.
Right, right. So you have to consider the smoker ideally a closed system, right?
Right.
So we have an inlet and an outlet, and the inlet has the damper on it. And so if your fire's too hot, you need to starve it. So you close that damper down, starve it of oxygen. And if it starts to get too cold or you need more flow, then you open it up.
So this sounds like a perfect, and I'm going to drop some big words here, CFD, or computational fluid dynamics analysis. I actually just saw one of these on the interwebs the other day.
Oh, yeah? What was it
Yes.
doing?
It was doing a CFD analysis showing how and where the flow through a smoker goes.
Oh,
So
really?
It was showing that one side of it was going to be hotter, and over on the other part
So
it
it
was
was
going to
doing
be a little
thermal
cold.
as well?
Yeah, it was doing a coupled thermal fluid
Well,
analysis.
you would assume that the manufacturers are doing this kind of stuff, right?
I would hope so, yes. Or the ones that cost like $100 probably are not doing that.
Yeah, they have a general idea. It's going to get hot somewhere.
That rule of thumb thing again, right? It's probably close.
It would be interesting to try and design your own to see if you could somehow make it more consistent.
Well, I sent you that meme, right? Or maybe you sent it to me of like a filing cabinet that
yeah,
was turned
right.
into a smoker.
Right,
I mean, it seems like it would work, maybe.
Drill some holes and hope it doesn't collapse on you, but
I,
it'd be fine.
I feel like whatever's on the bottom is going to be a lot more cooked than whatever's on the top.
Yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah, all right. So back to the basics of the smoker. So we talked about the offset smoker. If you get a little bit fancier, though, we have a reverse offset smoker. And that's where, after the smoke is coming through the food and smoke chamber,
Right.
the stack is actually on the same side as the firebox. And
So does it have to do a loop?
so it doesn't have a grate. It has to do a loop because it's shut off from exiting immediately. So it kind of doubles the airflow around the meat.
Okay.
So infusing it more and I guess cooking it faster then.
Yeah,
I would have to assume.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Was there a benefit associated with that?
You know, I didn't actually look at that. I was just mostly taking notes.
Got it.
Got it. Like
How
most things I
very
do.
unprofessional
half-assed.
of you.
Right. Absolutely. So a couple of concerns with these designs, and we kind of hit on it with our CFD analysis talk, and that would be the cooking temperature. Closer to the firebox, hotter. Further away, colder. So things could, in
Well,
theory,
but so maybe that's the advantage of the reverse one, right?
Right, it keeps
Because
things
it's
consistent.
going out and coming back. So if you're hitting things twice, you would think that would help regulate temperature in there a little bit.
Right. So that temperature control is one of the problems. So they have a couple of solutions for you. One thing is a guard that you put up like on the grates, and it has holes drilled in it.
Okay.
And the one that's closer to the firebox has
Smaller holes.
smaller and less holes, and the ones further away have bigger ones. So it's
So-
controlling the airflow.
Kind of the same principle between a big HVAC
Right.
thing, right? Like bigger tubes closer and then smaller tubes out the end, just so you have consistent output.
And I guess this is called a tuning plate as you are tuning your smoking device.
That actually makes a lot of sense. But
It does.
I bet they're a pain to keep clean.
They sound terrible.
It does.
Yes.
Certainly sound terrible.
I'm told they're very expensive. So
Well, that certainly sounds like a very extravagant accessory, something you wouldn't necessarily require for the first couple of times.
yeah, I think that will be a later purchase, maybe when I have a more expensive smoker.
Right. I smoke maybe 10, 12 times a year.
Which is pretty good, really.
I
'cause
think
it takes
so,
a while.
but it's like a half day gone just doing that.
Right.
So it has to
And-
be like nice out.
Right, and I guess this gets us into a good next part to talk about is the different types of smokers.
Sure. What kind of
So-
fuel are you using?
Yeah, what kind of fuel, what's the shape, and so what kind of smoker do you use?
Well, I have a hand-me-down
Nice.
propane one. So it's gas, and even though it's gas, it's a four-letter word in the community, if you will.
Well, yeah.
Some people have talked about using propane or natural gas, that it can impart flavor itself just from having the propane burn. Some
Okay.
people call it
That's gross.
a perfuming effect. I can't taste it, especially since I smoke too much, apparently. So if my food is over smoked, you definitely can't taste the propane.
Right,
so.
I guess that's a good way to cover that up.
But honestly, I think as long as you're getting a complete burn, that you shouldn't have a problem.
Okay. And so there are a number of other types of smokers as well. And you
Sure.
said
So
that
we
the
have
propane's a four-letter word.
Right.
So where are we going if we want to be a true smoker?
Oh well, the purists, they're the cavemen.
The
They want your
cavemen.
hardwood lump charcoal, and that's it. Right.
Okay.
So as that burns, you're getting that's where the flavor's coming from, and it's also acting as the heat source. So you're getting both out of one. The trouble there is it's the most difficult from the chef's perspective, because you have to keep
You
a
have to
fire
sit
going.
there and
Yeah.
watch it.
And for those of us that live in the city, maybe we don't do campfires on a regular basis. So
Right.
keeping a fire going but not turn into a bonfire can be a kind of an ongoing process, right? Like you have to constantly babysit it, check it, see how it's doing.
How many engineers does it take to start a fire?
Well,
that sort of
to
thing.
keep a fire at 200 degrees. That's
Right.
that's the thing.
And if you happen to be maybe, indulging in some beverages while you're doing this
Well,
smoking,
I'm
come
pretty
on.
sure the instruction booklets require that.
I wouldn't doubt it. If they don't,
Like
they
that's like
should.
step one.
Crack a beer,
Right.
start fire.
Correct.
Sounds good. So, if you're a little bit lazier, like, say, me, you might look at something like an electric smoker,
Right.
where you plug it into the wall, you set your temperature, you throw in some pellets and maybe some water to add that extra vapor,
Right.
and you walk away for 2 to 24 hours, and then you show back up and you have delicious food to eat.
Right. But then you realize you just spent $200 on a glorified toaster.
But it makes smoke.
Yeah,
but so does
from,
my
like,
toaster, I
sawdust.
guess.
That's weird to me.
Is it really like sawdust?
That's what pellets are. Yeah, I mean, now
I thought
when
they
you
were
get
bigger
like
than
into an actual
sawdust.
pellet smoker, it's like hardwood dust. But I'm pretty sure
So
the
the-
electric one just takes like plywood.
I was actually going to ask you that about the pellet smoker. So I wasn't really clear on the difference between an electric smoker and a pellet smoker.
Well, and that's not my area of expertise either.
Okay.
I've never been around one before. I hear they're very easy to use, but one of the downsides is you have to buy these pellets from somewhere, right?
From somewhere.
And they're-
Amazon?
Right. So now you're paying for them, and they're expensive and a little harder to find than just going to get wood chips at Home Depot
Oh.
or something like that, right?
I did not know that, but okay. I guess that makes sense.
However, the difference between a pellet and an electric also uses pellets, but it has a big electric element, a heating
Burner?
element.
It's
Well,
like
I was
my-
gonna call
my
it a burner,
stove?
but no, it's a heating element. Like, so if you had an electric stove, same thing.
Yeah.
That sits at the bottom, and then you're basically filling a little tray with these
Okay.
pellets, and they essentially smolder. It never gets hot enough for them to ignite, and that's the
So
difference.
that's why you
between-
don't have to sit there and watch it and fill
Right.
it back up because
Right.
they just kind of smolder.
But that's also why it's the one that imparts the least amount of smoke flavor, right? So I mean, maybe just let it sit there for longer to get that. But I've heard and read that you don't get the fabled smoke ring.
Oh,
from
the
something
smoke
like that,
ring.
right? Like,
I have heard about
I mean,
that.
if you're not
yes.
going to try,
Well, it sounds like that's how I'm going to go because, again, I am extremely lazy and I typically indulge in too many adult beverages
okay,
and
we're
will
gonna
burn it.
we're gonna find a solution for you. Let me talk about pellet for just one more second.
Okay, go for
so,
it.
So what separates that from electric is the pellets actually burn. They ignite in a pellet.
So do I have to watch it and fill it back up?
Most of them are expensive enough that they have electric nannies that'll do all that for you.
Okay.
Your only job with that is to make sure the pellets are like the hopper holding the pellets
Oh.
stays full because they're actually burning, and that's the heat as well.
So just so you happen to walk by once throughout the day, you can dump
Yeah.
some more stuff in there.
Yeah, right.
Huh.
Or you could, I'm sure you could fashion like a garbage can and a hose, like a paintball hopper, and just fill it with pellets, something
Okay.
like that.
So before we go any further, let's take a break and get a word from our sponsors. Without them, we could do this because we don't have any sponsors.
Right.
So thank you, sponsors, for not giving us any money. I really appreciate it. But feel free to start ponying up some cash so we can keep going at this alarming rate. All right, so continuing on, I guess to get us back into this, have a little sound clip here that is pretty damn fitting for what we're talking about today.
I thought so.
And as always, sound bites courtesy of Dave. Always working hard.
Timmy, where's Lassie?
She's out in the orchard, Mom. Peaches are coming in mighty early this year.
Smoke. You know what they say, Timmy? Early peaches, long summer.
Smoke. What's that, Lassie?
Are you smoking yet?
That's a perfect clip.
It is rather fitting, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure they were speaking about smoked meats. I don't know what else they'd be talking about.
All right, so we were just talking about the different types of smokers, the propane, the wood, charcoal, gas, pellet, whatever.
Right.
But we also have a couple of categories such as vertical or horizontal.
Right.
Have any information on those for me?
Just the top of my head, I know that vertical allows for a better smoke distribution because everything gets hit because it travels up.
Okay.
But horizontal can help you cook larger things like full racks of ribs, things like that. In a vertical smoker, you'd want to hang them, which can be a little bit more awkward.
Hanging the meat. That sounds like, again, far more work than I want to put in.
And that honestly kind of concerns me. I've obviously never used any kind of hanger, but so the whole point of this is to make that meat want to fall off the bone, right? So
right.
where are you hooking it that it's going to survive for 6 or 8 hours?
Right. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. If it's going to be
unless-
fall off the
This
bones,
is like being supported from the bottom.
maybe
there's-
something like a sausage. That might work more for hanging.
Oh, sure. Something with a casing.
Yeah, with a casing. Right. And so I guess the horizontal smoker is what I was describing more of when we were talking about the offset smoker.
Yeah.
Where it has a separate chamber and the smoke goes through, blah, blah, blah. And the vertical is more like the filing cabinet that we were talking about.
And that's kind of what I'm used to at home, too.
Okay. Very good. All right, so that gets us to the actual wood that we're burning. So we've talked about, we're heating with gas, we're heating with charcoal. We throw pellets or sawdust or whatever in there to give it this flavor, but it's actually chunks of wood that we're burning, and that wood flavors our food.
Right. All those different methods were providing heat in different ways, but that smoke flavor is still coming from wood chips.
Right. So I have a list here of different woods and what kind of flavors or the intensity of flavor that you might get from them. But one thing that I found that was actually pretty interesting, and check out this sweet name drop that I'm about to put out there. The Forest Encyclopedia says
It's probably not printed on paper, is it?
it probably is not. It's an ebook for sure.
Obviously.
Smoke flavor is influenced more by the climate and soil that trees are grown in more than the species.
Huh.
So, I guess it makes sense. They taste like what they're eating, right?
Right.
So what's in the ground might make it different. So if you were, say, burning, I don't know, like hickory from one area versus somewhere else in the country or world, it would probably taste completely different because of their climate and soil conditions.
So would you assume that the purveyors of wood chips grow trees on farms with consistent conditions?
They probably do. I didn't really think about it, but it's almost like proprietary wood
right.
chips at this
Right,
point.
right.
What Budweiser and all of the big beer manufacturers have their yeast like refrigerated and grown, so it's exactly the same at all times. Why not this?
Or Jack Daniels has never moved their their distillery because the water right there, the limestone content, that's something
Same
that,
thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense, and I thought that was really interesting because it never would have dawned on me.
I wouldn't have thought about that either. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But typically speaking, they do have some general rules of thumb about the type of wood and the flavor that you're getting.
Yeah, you learned that the hard way. You don't want to use mean wood on delicate food.
What have you tried at this point?
Well,
And what worked well and what didn't?
I'm now afraid officially of mesquite. I tried that with chicken the first time. I was like, oh yeah, put some mesquite, and it was just obnoxious.
Let me tell you, I'm going down to the very bottom of my notes here, but I have mesquite is the strongest wood. So first off, I didn't actually know that mesquite was a type of wood.
Okay.
Like, I knew that there were mesquite barbecue
mesquite
potato
barbecue?
chips.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
and that was the
style.
extent of my knowledge.
Right.
So this warning, if you would have Googled it, would have said, Dave, it's supposed to be used like chili powder in a recipe. Just a little bit of it goes a long way,
Yeah.
and maybe mix it with some other wood for flavoring.
Yeah.
So that didn't work for you. So what worked well then?
I use fruit woods.
Fruit woods, okay.
Apple and cherry, if I can find it. They seem to work well for me.
Okay, and that makes sense because the mild flavors are usually the fruit trees.
Right.
Apple, cherry, peach, pear, something like that. It's going to give it a light smoky flavor and potentially even some sweetness to the meat.
Right. Think of all the sugar that ends up in in the fruit itself. It had to get there somehow.
What
right?
about those fruit pies? Oh man, I'm not sure that's real fruit, but boy, are
It's,
those delicious.
It's getting weird.
It's getting weird. All right.
All right, what other kind of woods do you have?
Well, I just wanted to say that might make sense about you smoking it longer times.
Yeah.
If it's the lighter
Oh,
wood,
right.
maybe that
Okay.
is a reason that it's not overly
So maybe
smoky.
3 hours for some chicken breasts
Right.
with mesquite was not the best way to do it.
Perhaps not the best.
I see.
All right, so that's what I have, and that would be maybe for fish, poultry, or pork.
Right.
And then we have something like birch, which is heavier.
Okay.
And so that would still be good for something like a fish, but a stronger tasting fish.
Okay,
Because,
but
you know,
it's like middle of the road.
a little bit middle of the road, but still towards the lighter side.
Okay.
So covering up that nasty fishy taste.
Interesting. Hey, easy.
I know. So middle of the spectrum woods.
Okay.
Hickory, maple, oak, pecan, whichever one you want to say.
Pecan.
Pecan, depending
Perhaps
where you're
piquant, 'cause
located.
you don't have a smoker.
Nice. So this is great for pork, and it's strong enough for beef or other game meats.
So we have these different levels of wood. So the food is the same way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
typically your white meats or your fish are the lightest, right? And then we go poultry, and then pork, and then beef. Is that kind of the progression?
yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Or red meat, I guess, at the bottom.
Red meat, right. So we could draw one of those little diagrams out there with a little line and put all of our meats
Yeah.
on there versus what type of wood you should be smoking with.
Right.
So you've tried some of these as well for chicken.
Yeah.
And how much does a bag of that go if you're just going to go buy chips?
I don't remember.
You don't
Isn't
remember?
that I think it's under $10, but I'll typically use almost the whole bag or
Oh,
three-quarters
really?
of the bag, the whole, yeah. But then again, I tend to oversmoke, right?
Right. I think if anything has been made clear through this,
I think
that's
I
what
have
we
a
got.
typical like or chip hopper, if you will,
Chip hopper.
that I fill twice, maybe.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm generous with the area around it.
That's nice of you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so those ones, I guess, are what we're really looking for, especially if you're out in the woods killing some harmless little animal
Right.
and you then want to make him delicious.
Right.
Him or her.
Yeah, I mean,
delicious.
possum straight is not something you want.
I don't know if it's something you want ever. Nah, all right. And then I guess the last one to really bring it home for me is the mesquite again. Basically, don't use it. Or if you do, very little of it.
Well, I'm pretty sure guys in Texas use it, but not all of it. They'll pair it with something else to knock it down a little bit. Maybe some apple, maybe some maple.
Right. But I think if you're a guy in Texas, it's part of you. You were born with the skill to smoke
Yeah, but
meat.
I'm telling you what, man. Eating my way through Austin was one of the better weekends ever.
Until you got home.
They know what they're doing down there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's pretty much all I have on the topic of smokers. Anything else from you that you found interesting, valuable, or something that might just fill some time?
Well, talk about preparation a little bit.
All right.
So we've covered a couple different variations of smoker equipment. We've talked about different types of fuel. We've talked about different flavors the wood imparts. We've talked about what we're smoking. There's also some techniques involved as well. And, you know, because it's going to be over a fire or a heat source for several hours, moisture is always a concern. So we have that water pan in there. And some people use apple juice or apple cider. I tend to use beer just because I have it handy. I don't always have apple cider lying
Because you
around.
don't drink enough of your beer exchange beer.
Correct.
The crappy ones
That's
you use.
a great way to get rid of a pumpkin beer that I didn't want in the first place.
Right.
So it's going to give me a little bit of subtle flavor, maybe, you know, but I'm getting rid of it.
Right.
But something else that I do is the night before I brine whatever I'm going to cook. So if that's chicken or pork shoulder or something like that, it goes into the fridge overnight with equal parts salt and brown sugar, and like just fill a Ziploc bag with water, right? And
Name
and-
drop.
yeah,
Ziploc.
right. I meant
Sponsor.
plastic bag,
Plastic bag.
zipper lock.
Yes.
Anywho, so I'll do that, and then, and I find that helps when I'm just grilling as well.
Sure.
Like it just helps to keep the moisture in, especially for chicken. You know, if you have something real thick cut that you're going to cook for a while.
Right.
So nice base, some subtle flavor there as well. And obviously, then you take it out of the fridge and let it sit out while you're getting your smoker up to temperature. You know, that helps. The meat's better off starting at room temperature rather than being at cold. And then something else I've been doing lately is a vinegar mop as well. So when I
Wow.
go, you know, every half hour or so, I'll go down and check how the smoke is doing, if you will.
Right?
And with the lid off, because I have to take it off. That's one of the downsides of the vertical.
Cools it
right?
off then, right?
Yeah, so a little temperature change, but it allows me to just hit whatever meat's there. Actually, I was just talking to somebody about it today. I have like one of those old school mustard containers, like little
Sure.
conical.
Yep.
And so I'll just douse it with that. But somebody I was talking to today, they use a spray bottle, and that sounds like
sense.
an awesome idea.
Might
So
be a little cleaner.
I
Yeah.
might be upgrading to that. Yeah.
Nice.
So you brine, you mop, and then obviously everything is dry rubbed. For me, found a couple of good recipes for dry rubs. That's where you get most of the flavor. And then with the smoke, they turn that into nice bark on the outside, so you get that crunchy outside. And then, obviously you can follow up with sauce if you want.
Of course.
And I always plan to do a sauce, but lately I've been really happy without it.
All right. Maybe the sauce is, oh, I screwed this one up. A little too much mesquite. Time to douse it with sauce
Even
to
this
try and
out.
hide it.
Or, like I did the other day, you shred something.
Right.
If you're going to make sandwiches or something like that. It's
Put it on at the end there. Not a bad idea.
totally worth it.
All right.
Anyway, back to your problem about which smoker do I buy. Since you're lazy,
I am lazy.
I'd like to inform you that if you have lots and lots of money, you can
That's my problem.
you can get the caveman style. You have to light an actual fire, but a lot of these manufacturers have nannies that you can add that will automatically open and close that damper for you. One of my friends has it, and from his phone he can see the internal temperature, he can see the meat temperature, and he can see the computer deciding, okay, I need to do this for the fan, I need to close this damper just to adjust the fire for you. So just
All
depends
right,
on how
so
into it you want to get.
a number of ways for me to be lazy. That's
Correct.
great.
Yeah, you can do all that from the couch.
All right. Well, it looks like we've covered everything from why we smoke to how we smoke, the different types of smokers, and the different types of fuels and food preparation. So I think that anyone out there listening probably has enough to go on to pretty much be an expert at this point.
Right? Enjoy the summer.
All right. And with that, go out and enjoy your summer, and we will catch you next week.
All right. See you, kids.